The king who disguised himself as a beggar. The fire burned low as the children gathered beneath the great baobab tree. Crickets sang in the distance, and the night breeze carried the scent of roasted maize. The oldest elder, Baba Nuru, looked around the circle before speaking. My children, he said, have you ever wondered how a king truly knows his people? The children exchanged curious glances. One little boy answered, he asks his chiefs. The elder smiled. And if the chiefs are afraid to tell him the truth? The children fell silent. Baba Nuru leaned closer to the fire. Then listen carefully, for this is the story of the king who hid his crown beneath a beggar's cloth. Long ago, there was a prosperous kingdom called Zawadi. Its rivers were full, its farms were green, and its markets overflowed with traders from distant lands. The people praised their king, King Jabari. Whenever he rode through the streets on his white horse, the people shouted, Long live the king! His ministers smiled proudly. Your Majesty, they would say, our people have never been happier. But King Jabari was not convinced. He noticed something strange. Whenever he appeared, the streets were swept clean. The poorest people disappeared. Even the complaints stopped. One night, he called for the oldest woman in the kingdom, Mama Abeni. She had advised 3 kings before him. My queen mother, he asked, how can I know whether my people truly speak from their hearts? She looked into the fire before answering. A king who is always seen as a king will never hear the truth. The next morning before sunrise, King Jabari removed his royal robes. He covered himself with worn clothes, rubbed dust upon his face, and carried only a walking stick. No guard followed him. No trumpet announced his arrival. For the first time in his life, he walked through his own kingdom unnoticed. At the market, he greeted a merchant. The merchant barely looked at him. No money, the merchant snapped. Move aside. Near the well, he asked for water. Some ignored him. Others laughed. One young woman quietly handed him a calabash filled with cool water. Thank you, he said. She smiled. My mother taught me that kindness should never ask who deserves it. The king remembered her face. As the days passed, he traveled farther. He met farmers whose crops were failing because a local official demanded unfair taxes. He met a widow who had waited months for justice after her land was stolen. He met children walking miles to fetch water, while reports reaching the palace claimed every village had a working well. Each night, the king wrote everything in a small notebook. Not one complaint came from people who knew they were speaking to their king. They spoke honestly because they believed he was nobody. One afternoon, as he rested beneath a baobab tree, an old shepherd sat beside him. You look tired, the shepherd said. I've been walking through the kingdom, replied the disguised king. And what have you found? The king sighed. I found that people smile when the king passes, but cry after he leaves. The shepherd nodded. Then your king has a problem. What problem? He has built a palace with many windows, but none that look into the hearts of his people. The words struck King Jabari like thunder. After many weeks, the king returned to the palace. The ministers welcomed him with songs. Your Majesty, one said proudly, the kingdom is flourishing. King Jabari remained silent. The next morning he called for the entire kingdom to gather in the royal square. Thousands came. When everyone had arrived, the king walked onto the platform wearing the same torn clothes he had worn as a beggar. The crowd gasped. I stand before you, he said, wearing the clothes in which many of you met me. He pointed toward the merchant. You refused to help a hungry stranger. He smiled at the young woman. You gave water to someone who could offer you nothing. He turned toward a governor. You demanded taxes that the law never required. The governor trembled. One by one, the king revealed everything he had seen. No one could deny it, because the truth had come from their own actions. That day, corrupt officials were removed. New wells were dug. The widow received her land back. The taxes were made fair. The young woman who had offered water was invited to advise the palace on caring for the poor, not because she was wealthy, but because she possessed compassion. Years later, King Jabari's son asked, "Father, what was the greatest lesson you ever learned?" The old king smiled. "It was the day I discovered that a crown can hide the truth." The prince looked puzzled. King Jabari placed the royal crown in his son's hands. "Wear this proudly, he said, "but never let it become so heavy that you forget how ordinary people live." From that day onward, every ruler of Zawadi spent 1 week each year traveling the kingdom without revealing their identity, not to test the people, but to test themselves. Baba Nuru looked around the fire at the children. "The strongest kings," he said softly, "are not the ones who hear the loudest praise. They are the ones who seek the quiet truth." The flames flickered beneath the night sky, and the children understood that greatness is measured not by the height of a throne, but by the willingness to step down from it. Moral: a true leader does not rely only on what people say in public. They seek the truth with humility and serve those whose voices are often unheard.